this guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Commissioner, how many investigations do you have ongoing today?
2.
How many investigations are ongoing with respect to Sustainable Development Technologies Canada?
The proposal of those are with regard to the sustainable development.
Are you able to undertake preliminary investigations into other board members at SDTC?
As you know, we basically act on requests from the public of members. I have the authority to start investigations of my own, but again, all of this has to be done on the basis of credible evidence or suspicion, etc. And I have seen no reason so far to start anything other than the 2 which we have ongoing.
And with respect to the other members of the board and matters of public record and including committee transcript, you're confident that there's been no reasonable suspicion has been raised that voting members were doing so to materially benefit themselves?
Correct. There's been no evidence of any kind. Suspicions or allegations have been raised with regard to the other members.
And of course, if you were presented with new evidence by a member of the Parliament, member of the public, through open source information like media or committee testimony, would you investigate other board members?
Well, it depends on what the information is, how credible it is, how substantive, etc. But if indeed they meet the threshold of that there is something that needs to be investigated, there's sufficient evidence to indicate something contrary to the rules we will present, then we would do it.
Now, in your review or briefs on past files, past investigations, has it been the case that investigations, in this case we're talking about the Board of Sustainable Development Technology Canada, where you're investigating 2 individuals who served on the board, that in similar past circumstances that those investigations could give rise to further investigations of other members of the board based on your past experience?
Well, my past experience is very short, as you know. I don't know whether my predecessors said it. I mean, I can just answer basically hypothetically. Yes, it is possible. I don't know what has happened. Melanie, do you know of any past investigations that have spawned subsequent investigations?
None that are coming to mind.
Have you been able to obtain all of the information that you've requested, documents, evidence from the Sustainable Development Technologies Canada organization?
Yes.
And so they've been forthcoming. Are you able to share with us who your point of contact is with SDTC? There's been a number of changes with that organization since your investigation commenced.
You're asking me for some detail that actually my investigators, so all I know is that we've asked for information, we got all the information, we asked the witnesses to come forward, they came forward, they were put under oath, and they have testified.
So
if you want to know who actually does it here, who actually we contacted on the organization who's been responding to us, I can get you the name, I don't have it here.
I appreciate that, sir. So am I correct in inferring from your response that you've interviewed both of the subjects of the 2 complaints that you've received from SDTC and that they swore an oath and provided testimony to you?
That's correct.
Could you take us through the investigative process so far for the SDTC file? I appreciate there's information that you're not able to get into until you've presented your report. But I imagine there's a process that you'd follow. Are you able to take us through that and forecast when you would expect the resolution? I know informally, I believe I asked you before, and you said as soon as possible, which I appreciate. But what has the process looked like?
Well, the process, as you appreciate, first of all, as the complaint is made, we look at it. We see that there is enough substance to warrant an investigation. Then we do an investigation. We notify the people. We ask them to send us all relevant documents. They send them to us. We examine the documents. On the basis of that, we then structure the questioning. We ask them to come. They put them on their oath. They answer the question. If we need some other people as a result of those questions whose testimony will be relevant, we'll summon them. Same process again. Then once everything is done, we come to a conclusion, write a report. The factual part of the report we send to them saying, hey, these are the facts that we found. Have we anything incorrect or do you want to help us? We certainly don't want to misstate the factual situation. They give us a response. And then once we have that, then the whole thing is translated into both languages, and then we publish it. And on the same day, we notify the person who's here. I can tell you now that certainly before the 1st of August, you'll see the report.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
When you were last at this committee, you were asked about sponsored travel by a number of MPs. Do the problems associated with sponsored travel, like the apparent limitless value of gifts receivable during a travel, is that a problem for you? Have you given any thought to this since the last time you visited?
You know what the rules are, and these are the rules that you yourself passed. It's the codes that the House passed for members of the House. So I administer them, I live with them. Could they be improved? That's up to you to decide, and the general public. You know, my job in this case is not to suggest that you change your code, but you decide the code you want to live by, and I apply it.
Thank you for that. When a member believes an investigation is warranted by your office, do you think it's responsible of the member to predetermine the outcome of the investigation and publicly share this view?
Well, I don't think that's the proper behavior, but on the other hand, we live in a country of freedom of speech. They can, of course, say what they want. It's their opinion. That doesn't mean that will be the outcome of the investigation.
Section 13 of the code states, a member shall not participate in debate on or vote on a question in which he or she has a private interest. Does this mean that someone who is advocating for a sector in which they have financial interest during a debate in the House or a committee is violating this part of the code?
Well, it depends again how you define sector, you know, and how large of it. If you're talking about, let's say, farming, you know, and you're a farmer, obviously you can speak on it. If, however, you're a milk farmer, and this is something specifically on milk farming, etc., you know, you probably should not, because that clearly will affect you. But so you have to put it in context what the sector is and what is things that it's proper to contact or not. I get a lot of queries on this very point from you and other, if not from you personally, but from members of Parliament, and we give them the best advice we can under the circumstances.
The Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics, typically you post your annual reports online, and you certainly, that was the case between 2021 and 2024 for the strategic plan. Sorry, the 2018 to 2021 strategic plan is currently available online, but your current plan, the 2021-2024, is not published online. Why is that?
It doesn't exist yet. We have. I mean, I was only appointed in September on a temporary basis, and just last month on a permanent basis. And obviously, one of the things to do is to have a new strategic plan. But for the time being, we are living with the one that went to 21, and we basically up to what was it? What was it?
2024.
2024, and we basically will in the coming months try to come up with a new strategic plan setting out our goals.
And when do you said in the coming months, when do you think we can expect that specifically?
Melanie, this is in your hands.
We were awaiting the arrival of the commissioner into the position on, or someone into the position on a permanent basis before we moved forward with that planning. Our intention is to have some conversations with the commissioner to help him understand the projects that have been undertaken in the last few years and what will be continuing forward, and make sure that what continue forwards reflects that. I would
I
anticipate.
do have to intervene for a moment. My apologies to take my time back.
Yep.
He was the interim. He's certainly been around. Your intention is to commence this discussion. Has it begun? Or am I to understand it hasn't begun yet?
The conversations have certainly started with the commissioner, but I would anticipate that my team would be in a position to have that plan done this calendar year.
So, Commissioner, back to you. Assuming that there would have been kind of a process for your permanent appointment to this, in your discussions with government as you were finally appointed to this permanent position, what did you identify during the interview process that would be your main priorities, knowing what you know, be it from an interim basis or from your previous work?
Exactly what I said in my opening statement. I think the office is twofold. It is one, to deal with conflict of interest if there's one, but the other side is also to facilitate the entry of the best talent from the public service to the private service and vice versa. And we really have to concentrate on that, because if you do that well, then you have very few conflicts of interest, etc. And so what we're part of is the education, which Melanie talked about. We have done this online now for MPs. We probably will need one to do for the people who are subject to the Act, especially the people who are nominated, and then also to make sure that people understand that this is not something that you just have to do, it's like checking off, I signed my statement, that's it. No, it has to be something that's on your mind in your daily activity, and this requires a lot of publication, a lot of speaking publicly, and also using the modern media to get that message out.
That will suffice. Now, into your work, presumably you would have reviewed the previous strategic plans. You would have likely done some financial forecasting to begin to consider a budget. Obviously, we're in budget time. You're here in the main estimates. Did any of the elements of the previous strategic plan require additional financial and human resources?
Yeah, you can answer that best.
Yes. No, so there was no requirement for additional human resources.
So in the time of this term, so we'll call it 2021 till now, how many complaints were filed?
Melanie, do you have the number?
Complaints in what sense? Could you please clarify what you mean?
Complaints to your office, formal written complaints that you would have had to consider whether you pursued or you didn't pursue.
I don't have the number of cases that we looked at specifically in front of me at the moment. They are recorded in our quarterly reports that are posted online, and I'd be happy to compile those and get back to you.
Okay, so if you were to ballpark, what I'm trying to get a sense for is how many active complaints or complaints that you receive versus how many you pursue, to get an understanding of the volume of work and whether or not it's adequate for your office. I hear today that there's only 2. So I would imagine that even within this last year or so, there would likely be more complaints. Could you comment on how many complaints you've had within the last year, fiscal year, so starting in 2023 till now?
Mr. Green, you're using 2 different terms here. One is complaint, one is investigations.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm trying to discern.
So, which number
pursued?
do you want? We can give you the number of investigations right now, 2, as you told.
You've already done that, sir. I'm asking you how many complaints, because I want to see how many complaints you receive versus how many you actually pursue. It's a very basic
fine.
concept.
Okay, we can get you that number. No problem. I have nothing to hide. I just don't have it here.
Fair enough. Thank you. That'll conclude my round.
Merci, Monsieur Green. Cela conclut notre premier tour.
Thank you, Mr. Green. This concludes our first round of questions. We're going to move on to the second round of questions for 5 minutes. Mr. Brock, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you and good morning to our witnesses. And may I publicly congratulate you, Commissioner, on your full-time status. I want to follow up a little bit on some of the questions posed by my colleague, Mr. Barrett, with respect to the two ongoing investigations regarding SDTC. And I trust that you're probably not at liberty to tell us at what point you are in the investigation, but obviously it'll be wrapped up soon enough. At this point in time, have you uncovered any element of criminality associated with the complaints?
No.
Okay. And I want to spend a little more time on the issue of criminality because I know you have a mandate to report to the RCMP. And this was kind of fleshed out the last time you appeared with the former Commissioner Dion. You had legal counsel also assisting in the answering of the questions I put to Commissioner Dion, but I don't think it was sufficient time for me to get a fulsome response. So if I understand correctly, where you detect criminality, the threshold from your perspective, is it correct? It is reasonable and probable grounds.
Yeah, reasonable, definitely. Yeah, probably. I mean, this is like all discussions. You can't define them. That's part of the problem. But when we investigate, we come across something that gives reasonable suspicion that there is some criminality. At that point in time, we stop the investigation. We inform the RCMP and say, "Look at this."
I'm really pleased to hear that, Commissioner, because the takeaway from Commissioner Dion and legal counsel surrounding the SNC Lavalin matter is they felt there was no probable grounds to make a referral to the RCMP. Although the RCMP relied upon their report and the evidence contained in that report, I thought that that threshold from a non-law enforcement entity, being your office, was completely inappropriate. What is appropriate, based on your response, is mere suspicion. And I think that's the lowest standard you can have in terms of any criminality. So it's very pleasing to me to hear that during your tenure, that is going to be the legal threshold.
I said reasonable suspicion. I didn't say suspicion. You are a former prosecutor.
I'll use your words, sir.
You know the standard.
Yeah, reasonable suspicion, which is a very, very low standard. So in relation now to SDTC, you said you read the papers, you currently know what's going on in the House. It's been dominating the news for some time. We've got another scandal with this Justin Trudeau government, and that is the Arrive scan. Have you received any complaint from any member with respect to Arrive scan to date?
No.
Okay. You also have the mandate under Section 45 of your Act to initiate your own investigations. Based on what you have learned so far, read, or received information with respect to the Arrive scam, is there any prospect that you may be looking into an investigation as to what has transpired with our broken procurement system?
The Arrive scan is a procurement issue. I don't deal with procurement, as you know. I deal with conflict of interest. The parties involved in it so far, and everybody that's been mentioned, is not subject to either the Act or the Code of Conflict. So therefore, there's no reason for me to look into it, start an investigation or anything.
Okay, very well. Thank you. How many agency-initiated complaints, or sorry, not complaints, but investigations, say in the last 3 years, has your office initiated?
I don't have the number. I can get it to you. I'm sorry. Last 3 years.
So is it fair to say you're largely complaint-driven?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Can you recall the last time that either you were involved or your review of your office's records, whether there was an occasion where your office initiated an investigation on your own?
Well, certainly not during my tenure. But Melanie, I do recall that we've done.
The office the past commissioners have initiated investigations on their own accord without, based upon information that they've come across without it necessarily being a direct request from a member of parliament or a senator, but I would have to get back to you on the exact number of those.
The lobbying firm run by Pierre Poilievre's top strategist, Jenny Byrne, established a second company, Forecheck Strategies, housed out of the same office for the purposes of lobbying federally. Now, are you aware of this situation?
You know, I'm not responsible for lobbying. Ms. Belanger, you will appear after me. You should ask us these questions.
Now, have you been in touch with any of the Conservative members with respect to this issue at all?
As I say, I mean, I deal with conflict of interest. Neither Ms. Byrne is responsible under the Conflict of Interest Act or the Code. So all these activities that she's doing are totally outside my remit.
When we talk about the benefits that are received or a relationship that may have that conflict of interest in terms of how a political party acts and how their interaction is with lobbying firms, do you not see that as a conflict of interest at all, or that's something that you should be concerned about?
You got to give me a specific fact situation and the details of what you think is there, and that is a concern. If it is in a violation or possible violation of the Act, obviously we will look at it. But I just purely speaking hypothetically and throwing a name at me, I'm sorry, I can't give you a more complete answer.
I mean, you're asking for specific facts. Now, reports have indicated that Ms. Byrne attends regular caucus meetings which are typically reserved for Conservative members of Parliament, senators, and top staff. Reporting also details Ms. Byrne's active participation in morning strategy calls within the opposition leader's office. Now, to me, that seems like there is a specific relationship there, and that should be covered by the Act. Now, would you not agree with that?
Ms. Byrne is a private consultant, is she not?
A private consultant who happens to be the top strategist for a political party with specific interests with her company and her lobbying.
Right. Where's the conflict here?
Well, that's exactly what I'm asking you, sir. You are the expert here. I would like to have a better understanding as to how it is that a private company can sit and have political influence and strategize with a political party, and that you don't question how that occurs, or what implications there are, private or public, what kind of political influence there is happening.
Surely my job is to make sure that a public official does not abuse the information and create a conflict of interest here. How they conduct their own political activity, whom they consult, etc. That's not part of it. I've failed to see from what you just put forward to me that you invite these people to your sessions. Well, if you want that, that's your problem. What has this got to do with your official duties? I don't understand it. I'm so sorry. I don't see how this.
Well, I will definitely clarify now. It is my belief that the role that Ms. Byrne plays within the Conservative Party is similar, and if not the same, as what a minister's staff plays. And to have those conflicts of differing interests here, I think is a flag for conflict of interest. Have you looked into this matter at all? Has anybody brought this up to you?
Very quick response.
No, I have not looked at it, and nobody has raised it before, except you today.
For the record, sorry, can you again state your role and how long you've been in it?
My role?
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm the Director of Corporate Management. I'm also the Chief Financial Officer for the office, and I've been in this role since June 2016, so almost 8 years now.
Have you had instances where requests for estimates haven't been met, or your budgetary requirements haven't been met? Have you ever had that in your recollection?
No, that's never happened before. But we've never asked for, like, everything that we've asked. Usually it represents a small increase every year in terms of economic increases and salary increments, and it's the same case this year.
And so minus the gapping that you would have had by not having a permanent person in there, would you have found upward pressures given the cost of living, given collective agreements and everything else? Are you able to adequately meet the demands? And forgive me if I came off pretty sharp in the last round, but I was trying to find out how many complaints go in, how many are investigated, is there a gap there? And if so, why? Is it funding? Could you use more people given the kind of state we're in, the lack of trust, the cynicism that we have in government? Because in my estimation, if an allegation was made against me, I would want it quickly investigated and I would want it turned around. When it's not pursued or perhaps when it's dismissed, then it kind of leaves it hanging out there without that conclusion. So in your opinion, does your full-time complement of staff meet the demand, the growing demand for complaints?
Yes.
Need
So
a
far
very,
it has.
very, very quick response,
Okay.
please.
So far it has. I just have to say, like, the most of our budget is for advisors, so it doesn't go to investigations and legal services. It's mostly for advisors, as it's about 40% of our complement. So we have not had any issues in terms of budget to be able to answer or to respond to complaints.
I find it interesting the Liberals' line of questioning. It seems like they're auditioning to be in the official opposition when it's their record that certainly, their Prime Minister, twice convicted of breaching the Conflict of Interest Act, cabinet ministers, members of their party who have broken and found guilty of breaking the act, and Liberals' top pollster Don Guy lobbies the government. So we're not talking about somebody who has lobbied the opposition, but their top pollster, the one that's given them the information, lobbies the government for dollars. I tell you, that's certainly concerning to me. And former Liberal Cabinet Minister Navdeep Bains got he was responsible for regulating telcos and then gets a VP position at one of the national highly regulated telcos in our country. I tell you, it is quite something to hear these Liberals equivocate on such matters. Commissioner, I do want to ask though, because something we heard pretty specifically from your predecessor. That training was certainly an issue, and you outlined a few of the efforts that you're undertaking to make sure that resources are available to MPs and others that have responsibilities under the Act. So I do want to ask, though, what is the response to those training materials? And then a follow-up question to that is in the context of the availability of you and your team to be able to answer questions, to be able to speak with those who have obligations under the Act, to be able to answer those questions, to make sure that those who have obligations are able to understand exactly what those are. So first, if you want to outline a little bit more about what training opportunities you're providing, because I believe the former commissioner had said that it should be, there should be a mandatory retraining course. So I want to ask you about some of those resources, but then if you could outline what is the response, and do you have, if you could provide maybe information about the number of MPs, others that are subject to the Act, reaching out to your office, so you could explain to both this committee but also Canadians who might be watching about the resources that are available to make sure that those who have obligations have the information required to make sure they don't break the rules.
Okay. Melanie, answer the first question.
Absolutely. So there's a number of different pieces of training that are available from the office. As I explained, we've just recently finished the online training for MPs, and I've requested funding to be able to produce the similar type of product under the Act in the next fiscal year. One of the other things that we've recently completed is a survey of public office holders, similar to the one that we did a couple of years ago with members of Parliament, and asking them about the types of services from the office. From that, we know that they are happy with the training that they are receiving, but they would like to see some more topic-specific training, and we will continue to work on that. Similarly, making sure that we're responsive to the needs of the public. You mentioned people coming to us for information. In the course of a year, my team responds to in excess of 3,000 queries that come in from members of the public or the media, and we respond to all of those to let them understand what our role is and how we can help them.
Could I just, you mentioned some numbers there. Do you have, any information about the number of times that, MPs, and I know all MPs have to do the yearly filings and whatnot, but when it comes to like queries, do you have any numbers about, how often an MP or others that might have obligations under the Act reach out to your office to be able to request information, to ask about obligations, to ask for that information, to again make sure that those who are subject have the information required so that they don't break the rules?
Absolutely. Our yearly average is just in excess of 3,000 requests for advice that come into that team also. Last year, it was about 15% higher than the yearly average. And I can tell you also that their questions mainly pertain to material change, general obligations, as well as post-employment, which applies under the Act but not under the Code. In that, we are able to meet our service standards. Other members of this committee were asking about our ability to meet the demand. We are able to meet our service standards when someone, a member of Parliament or a public office holder calls, they are responded to within 3 days.
I appreciate that. So I guess my takeaway from this certainly is that there is no excuse for anybody who has obligations under the Code. They can get the information from you to make sure that they don't break the rules. It's just unfortunate sometimes that it seems that we have a government that seems to care less about being willing to follow the rules.